how do we quantify demand from individuals? And then to contrast, how do we quantify demand from collectives? So you said earlier that individuals have infinite desires or infinite demand. But always the problem is the scarcity of the resources that are out there. I mean, I want a yacht. You know, you want a yacht.
Exactly.
If there was no monetary barrier to it, we'd want everything.
Exactly. Well, we all have great wants. By the way, collectives, I will say this in terms of particularly corporate power, can be used and abused on occasion, because individuals, when you're an individual, you can make your own particular choices. But if you have a large corporation, let's say, that's really influential, sometimes they can make decisions and throw their weight around in areas that are not particularly that valuable to the ordinary citizen.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a concern, because you have governmental power, you have corporate power. Of course, governmental power, like the central government of the United States of America, is huge. I mean, it's bigger than countries, big countries.
Yeah.
And so it's been well said that the greatest threat to freedom is a concentration of power, whether or not it's in the corporate sector or in the governmental sector. So we have to be careful about that.
Absolutely.
That's why I like the 50 states.
Yeah.
As 50 states, we are the United States of America. We're not the Federal Republic of America. We're the United States of America. So states have influence, and we've seen that here recently with the virus, that governors do have an influence, and I like that, because that kind of diffuses the power.
Yeah, and it lets you, it's like if you were going to be a scientist about it, wouldn't you want 50 labs working on the problem at the same time? And then you could look and see.
And people doing different things.
Yeah, you could see which way is working, which ones don't.
Exactly.
You know, so.
This is why it's that one size fits all that we tend to try to do from the federal government is not really a good policy in many cases.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was the whole idea, I think, of having a federalist, system. So, on control, well, I was going to read a quote here. It says, "We all know that human wants are insatiable and unlimited. We need to remember that the wants of government fall into the same category. Government, particularly a central government, seems to always want more resources and to develop all kinds of reasons as to why this is a good idea," which is what you basically just said. It's one thing if we get these resources as a result of the growth of the economy. It's another thing if the share of the economy in citizens' hands begins to shrink. This involves a loss of freedom.
Exactly.
And so I believe you're talking there about just the growth of the state and how it has just kind of insidiously grown over time, where I remember at the turn of the century, the take of the government in terms of GDP was low single digits.
3%.
Yeah.
3% in the early part of the 1900s.
Yeah, I mean, versus where we at now,
about
19.
eight times that size, around 20 and 20 plus percent.
Yeah.
A lot of the European countries, it's closer to 50%.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, that's just the federal part of it. But the concentration of power can be a real serious thing, and it's natural for someone to say, "How about free college? How about free Medicare, medicine?" All of those things, they sound so good. The problem is they involve a tremendous expansion of government power. They involve a tremendous expansion of spending and borrowing, but it sounds so good. And so that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just lead us down that road, and when we get to the end of the road, we're not going to like it.
Yeah. Well, it's like if the idea was so good, why don't we do that, voluntarily? That's always to me like, why do you have to force everybody to do it? If it's such a good idea, why do you have to pull the guns out and force people to buy into your idea? So how particularly has the government centralized control?
Well, I think there's been a tremendous, I'll tell you this, it's been the 16th Amendment to the Constitution. And if you want to go back to 1913 and realize that we passed that amendment to the Constitution, and what that says is the federal government, the central government, will have an opportunity, the ability, the authority to lay an income tax on the population without any distribution to the states.
Yeah.
So the 16th Amendment basically allowed the federal government to come in and grab a huge share of the national income, take it to Washington, D.C., and that's why you have those huge buildings up there, all of those government employees. If it wasn't for the 16th Amendment, that wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Now, some of that money comes back because they do give some money back to the states in various
if they
forms.
play well, if they
But
obey.
you do it according to their rules.
If you obey them.
They have the money,
Yeah.
so they send it back with their rules.
Yeah.
It would have been so much better if there'd been some apportionment to the states
Yeah.
and let the governors and the states and the legislatures make some difference. That's been the biggest thing that really has moved us away from a decentralized system to a centralized system in the United States.
They have to follow. It's that one size fits all thing. If you don't play by their rules, they can withhold those funds from you, and it works both ways. And we've seen some of that of late. That the fallout of this is that whoever is in D.C. has so much more power over all the states and can allocate resources. Because just take New York for instance. There was a big fight in Congress about. They're in terrible shape fiscally, but it's from years of mismanagement probably. But unlike the federal government, New York can't print more dollars.
Exactly.
And so, they now I don't agree obviously with the way they have been profligate in their spending and mismanaged, because Arkansas is very has a very good record on fiscal issues.
Exactly.
Relatively speaking. We operate under a balanced budget, and most states have that, don't they?
Most do. We have the Revenue Stabilization Act, which says the governor cannot spend more money than comes in. So what the governor does, and when I was in higher education for many years, if the money didn't come in, we get a letter from the governor, and he says, "Dear David, the money didn't come in. You're going to get 5% less money than we expected. Good luck."
Yeah, right.
That's the way that works.
Yeah.
But that's reasonable. That's the way it works in our own families. If our incomes decline, then we're going to have to cut the budget. But the federal government, no. They have unlimited borrowing capacity, and you can see we have spent now, just in the last few months, $3 trillion. We're in the process of spending that. We obviously don't have it. Where are we going to get it? We're going to borrow the money. Who are we going to borrow it from? The Federal Reserve System and some others. Yeah. And down the road now, it'll all come home to roost. But right now, we can do it.
Yeah, we'll get there. I got a question on that.